Wonderful. So welcome everyone. Really excited today to be here with you to talk about limiting beliefs and how to coach through those with your health coaching clients. So I did hear from a few of you on this topic. I know that many of you are wondering, number one, are limiting beliefs something that we can indeed help our coaching clients with? Is that in our scope of practice? And if it is, then how do I do it? What do I do? How do I coach my clients through that? Because what can happen is this can tend to feel like it can slip into therapy a little bit or counseling. And of course, we want to watch that when it comes to scope of practice. So we're going to talk about those two things today. And I'm going to share some tips with you in terms of how to coach around limiting beliefs and hopefully really give you some practical tips that you can take away with today and start using with any health coaching clients that you're currently feeling are struggling and dealing with some limiting beliefs. And this does come up a lot in health coaching because many of our clients are trying to make change, right? Behavioral change. And when we do, a lot of those doubts and fears and negative voices in our heads can really creep in. And so there are, lots of challenges when it comes to limiting beliefs with our health coaching clients. And if they have those negative voices in their head holding them back, it really can, prevent them from making progress around their health and wellness goals. So this does come up a lot. It is a key topic. And it is definitely something that we can help our health coaching clients with. So what I want to do first is just talk a little bit about and just give you a little refresher on what limiting beliefs are. You're probably pretty familiar with them, but we'll just quickly recap here. So basically, limiting beliefs are any beliefs that we have about ourselves that actually place limitations on our abilities, right? They're kind of like assumptions and stories that we create about ourselves that aren't true. They're created in our ego, right? They come from that place of fear, the ego, and really they're just trying to keep us safe, right? They want to keep us in our little default zone, keep us safe. And like I said, when we're trying to make change or we're trying to move beyond our comfort zone and do new things and change our patterns and habits, that's when those voices can get really loud in our head, and they can, those stories, those limiting beliefs can become really, really strong and again, hold us back from making that progress and reaching our goals. So a lot of times these limiting beliefs were created in childhood, or as we were younger people. They're created from life experiences, traumas, situations we've been in. And what happens is they may have served us well as children or as young adults, or throughout those times in our life when we really needed to be protected and feel safe. But now as adults, they tend not to keep us as safe, right? They're not serving us as well as maybe they originally did and the original purpose they were created for. So we can make different choices now as adults in terms of, do I want to believe that belief, or is there a new one? Is there another truth that's actually really the truth about me and who I am? So just checking out my notes here to see if I missed anything there. Yeah, so I just wanted to also mention that these limiting beliefs, sometimes we say that they're coming from our inner gremlin, our inner critic, and they are that negative voice in our head. So just some other phrases and words that we can use in terms of what we're calling these limiting beliefs. Also just stories, right? Stories that we've created in our minds about ourselves, about our abilities. So that's, just generally what a limiting belief is. In terms of dealing with your own health coaching clients, I just wanted to give you a sort of a sample of what could a limiting belief sound like, when it comes to our health coaching clients. So I just listed some things here. They may say things like, I'm just not a healthy person, right? This belief about themselves that they don't believe them to be healthy. Maybe they're saying things like, I failed so many times, I just don't think I can ever do this, right? I don't think I can ever make this change. Maybe it's got to do with their family and their genetics. Maybe they're saying things like, all of my family is overweight or obese or unhealthy. They all have chronic illnesses. So, I know that I'm just doomed to get it too, and so why bother? right? So it's something, this limiting belief about, their family of origin. Maybe they're saying things like, I just don't have enough willpower to do this, right? They don't have that belief in themselves. I should just try harder, or I should be like so-and-so, or I should do what so-and-so is doing, like comparing ourselves to others. That's usually coming from a limiting belief. Just even, I can't do this. I'm never going to be able to stick to this. I don't deserve to be healthy. Usually, I don't think people say it in those words, but it may come up in other ways, this feeling of, unworthiness, I don't deserve it. So that's usually at the essence of a lot of limiting beliefs. So that's what it might sound like with some of your health coaching clients. And if you're hearing that kind of language, chances are you're dealing with a limiting belief. So what I want to talk about now is our scope of practice as health coaches, and what part of limiting beliefs is within our scope of practice and what shouldn't we be doing. So this is definitely one of those areas that a lot of health coaches struggle with, because they feel like, well, this is dealing with a childhood trauma or a childhood experience or a past experience. And so it feels like we're dealing in the territory of therapy or counseling, right? Because that's where limiting beliefs often started. So it does feel sometimes like we're trying to dig into the past, we're trying to process what happened, and that's all stuff that a therapist would do. And we tend to have the sort of guideline that as health coaches, we try not to dig back into the past as much. We as health coaches are kind of meeting our client where they are today and helping them move forward to where they want to be in the future. So that past experience piece can feel a little, like uncharted territory for us. And so from the coaching perspective, what I'd share is that we can absolutely support our clients with limiting beliefs, but it isn't about processing those past experiences, right? It's not about getting to root cause and processing what happened and where it came from. We're really not trying to process and analyze all of that. That definitely would feel more like the role of a therapist, a counselor, a mental health practitioner, some other person who's trained, in that realm. So what is in our scope of practice as health coaches when it comes to limiting beliefs, I've just got a couple of points here. That really what our job is, as I said before, meet them where they are today and help move them forward to where they want to be in the future. So it's really about helping our clients become aware that they have a limiting belief, because a lot of times our clients won't even know really what's happening, right? But we might start to listen, and with our active listening skills start to hear words and phrases and get little red flags that maybe there are some limiting beliefs. So really it is our role to help bring attention to that within our client, right? To sort of shine a light on that limiting belief so that the client can become aware that they actually are dealing with a limiting belief, and we can start to work with it and move on. So again, I already mentioned some things that you might already be hearing from your health coaching clients, but if you also hear them saying things like, I should, I can't, I'm not, I have to. Those sort of, words and phrases often lead into a limiting belief. So if you hear your client repeating over and over again those kinds of phrases, again, chances are you're dealing with a limiting belief. So we need to acknowledge it, we need to become aware of it, and then we really want to bring it into the present. So instead of asking questions like, oh, well, that's really interesting, tell me, where did that belief come from? Why do you feel you believe that? How did you develop this thought or, about yourself? So instead of asking those kinds of questions that would open it up to, dig back into the past, we really just want to notice. Again, notice, acknowledge, bring awareness to it. And then we can ask our clients, things like the impacts of the limiting belief. Do you notice that having this belief is impacting you in any way? Is it holding you back from anything? Because that's kind of bringing it into the present, right? We're not trying to process or go back to what happened. We're just trying to notice the impacts of it today, which is bringing it into the present. So we really just want to help them notice it and then work in kind of shifting that belief so that they can move forward toward those goals. So we definitely stay out of processing root causes and the situation around where the limiting belief came from, and we bring it into the present. So everything, as I've been saying, that we do in coaching is to meet the client where they are and help move them forward to where they want to be in the future. So I did want to share a couple of techniques that I learned throughout my years as a coach, throughout my education and my studies of coaching, to help you support your clients in this. So when we start working with limiting beliefs, the number one thing that I just want to share is that we really do need to be able to sort of assess in a way, is our client able to move forward from the limiting belief? Are they actually able to be coached around this? Because what we want to assess is, if this is something they can't move forward from, maybe they do need that therapy or counseling or some other, form of support that can maybe help them heal first from whatever the trauma, the experience was that led to the limiting belief. And then, maybe once they do that work, then they'll be able to come back to coaching. So, what I want you to just start noticing and hearing within your clients, because we aren't therapists, as we've already talked about, if your client keeps going back to the past experience, oh, here's what my parents did to me, and the injustice of it all, and maybe they're blaming someone else for, all of this. If they're really in that kind of victim mode and mentality, they're commiserating, they're ruminating, they just keep going back to that, past experience over and over and over again, and that root cause and what happened to them. Chances are, if that's the case, your client's probably not ready to let go of it, right? They're not ready to just say, yeah, that's something that happened in the past. I notice what's happening to me now and the impacts. I need your help in moving forward with that. So if that's the case with your client, again, as I said, maybe they do need a referral to someone else where they can heal and process and go through to analyze everything that happened to them. And then, that can bring them into the present, and then they, might be able to come back to you for ongoing help. So we really need to be able to assess where they are first. So if, you go through all of that, or you really just sense from your client that they are ready, they are willing to work through their limiting beliefs, that they're willing to look ahead, set vision, all of that good stuff, then that's a good sense that they're in a good place. So there are a couple of different ways. I'm sure there are many more. I'm just going to share two sort of processes and techniques here today with you that can get you started with supporting your client through limiting beliefs. These, I'd say, would be fairly basic techniques. I'm sure there are many, many other more advanced techniques out there, but I think these can be great ones to get started with. So the first one I wanted to share with you is really a 10-question coaching process. So it's just really a series of questions that you can guide your clients through if you're noticing that they've got some limiting beliefs. So this would be a coaching process. You might spend 20, 30 minutes, going through this. You might take a whole session to go through some of these questions to really help your client kind of understand, become aware, understand the impacts, and then be able to move forward. So this coaching process is really all about sort of starting to poke some holes in the limiting belief, right? To have your client realize that whatever they're believing about themselves really isn't the truth about who they are. So we're really trying to help them see that this isn't the truth, to really hope, the goal here is to release the grip that limiting belief has on your client, right? To shine a light on it. And that, is a really important point to make, that sometimes it feels like, this isn't deep enough, or it isn't powerful enough in terms of shifting these limiting beliefs. But, it really is true that by shining a light on it, having your client become aware of it, and going through this coaching process, that in itself can really help to release and loosen that grip that the limiting belief might have on your client. So it is really powerful in itself. So I'm going to share with you these 10 questions that you can use with your client to coach them through this process, to move them through. I will say that I will put a link in the comments below after that leads you back to a blog I did a number of years ago, which include these questions. So if you don't get them all down here, I'll put that reference there so that you have them. So I'll just go through them here and just read them out for you in case you want to jot them down. So the first step, the first question that you want to ask your clients is really all about identifying the limiting belief, right? So we really just want to get clear on what is the belief, what is the statement, what's the story, what's the belief that you keep telling yourself over and over and over again. So you want to get clear on that specific statement and the belief that the client's telling themselves. So what is it? Tell me what's in your head. What do you repeat to yourself over and over and over again? So that's the first one. The second one is to just gauge gauge how true this is for the client. So again, we want to start helping the client realize that this isn't the truth. So the question would be, to what degree on a scale of 1 to 10 would you say that your belief has been true for you up until now? Right? So 1 is low, 10 is high. So we really want them to just assess, gauge, put a number on it. How true is this belief for you? How strongly do you feel it? Do you feel like this is a 10, that you absolutely believe this about yourself? Or, are you starting to doubt it, right? Are you down at a 3 or a 4? So just gauge where they are. That's going to be an important part of the coaching process. Then the third step is to ask your client, can you find any proof at all that this belief is not true about who you are, right? So we want to start poking some holes in this theory a little bit, right? So example, things you have done in the past, accomplishments, successes. So that's going to help your client start to feel like, yeah, this might not be 100% true about me, right? Is there any proof that you have that this belief is not true about you? Right? So we're trying to sort of refute the belief that the client has about themselves. So then the fourth question or step would be, what are the consequences of holding on to this belief? Consequences and impacts are so important parts of the coaching processes. So what negative things could happen in the future if you kept holding on to this belief? What would you miss out on? What are the impacts of continuing to believe this about yourself, right? So we really want to help the client explore all of those types of consequences and impacts of holding on to that belief and what could happen if they continue to believe it. The fifth question is, how do you benefit from holding on to this belief and staying stuck? Right? This is going to be a tricky one. This is really a tough question for most people to answer. When we think about changing, we usually only think about benefits, but there usually are benefits of staying the same, right? So if you continue to hold on to this belief and staying stuck, what are those benefits? So really encourage your client to be truthful here. There are always things that they're going to gain from holding on to a belief or staying stuck. So example of things might be, it's easier just to stay where you are, right? It's just plain easier. They're gonna gain, not having to work so hard, gain not taking a risk, gain just continuing to eat those yummy foods that they love, gain sitting on the couch and being comfy and not doing the work. So those kinds of things are what you'd be looking for there. So the sixth question is, if you do let go of the belief, what is possible, right? So this is going to take your client into that future state. What is the future vision you have for your health and well-being? What does that look like? This is going to help your client start to get excited about what's possible in the future if they're able to let go of that limiting belief and move on from it. Right? So this is where some of that motivation comes in. So as you can see here, as I go through these questions, these are really powerful, basic, if you will, sometimes coaching questions that follow our typical coaching framework. The seventh question would be to just really check in with your client, So after reflecting on all those previous answers to those other questions that I just asked you, can you agree that the belief is not the truth about who you are, right? So we want them to start thinking about, what, this might not be true about me and who I am. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how true is that belief for you now? So hopefully if it was a 10 or even an 8 or a 9 when you first started with the client, after going through some of these questions, maybe now they're down to like a 5 or a 6. Maybe they're starting to have some of those doubts, or even a 6 or a 7. So then the 8th question is, are you ready to let go of this belief, this limiting belief about yourself, and find a new one that serves you better? So it's really important to gauge the readiness to let go. Are you really ready to make a conscious choice here to let go of that old limiting belief and come up with a new one? Then the 9th question would be, of course, what is that new belief? One that's more empowering and can help move you forward. So invite your client to come up with an I am statement, as if it's already happening, like a mantra or an affirmation. So it could be, I am ready, I am worthy, I am healthy, so just a reframe, an affirmation. What's the story that the client can use to sort of combat the old limiting belief? If your client kind of resents the I am, because sometimes we're not fully ready for I am, it could be I am in the process of, right? I am in the process of working toward this. I am in the process of feeling worthy. I am in the process of becoming healthier. Those kinds of phrases and words and statements can really be powerful. So, really support your client in coming up with that new statement, whether it's an I am or I am in the process of. And then finally, the 10th piece to this would be to really invite your client to develop an action plan around this, right? What are the next steps? So based on everything that we talked about here today, now that you have these new insights about these limiting beliefs, maybe you're not believing that they're wholly true about you now. What can you do to keep going, right? How will you work with this new belief or affirmation or mantra about yourself? What's the first step that you're going to take to moving toward that new vision of yourself, right? So it's all about next steps. What are you going to do with this new information, and how are you going to move forward? So that's the first process I wanted to guide you through, that 10-step coaching process to really help shift and have your client realize that this limiting belief that they've been dealing with is not 100% the truth about who they are. So that's a great process to move through. So again, like I said, you could spend a whole session working through this with your client. So the next strategy or tip that I want to share with you comes from a really great book. It's actually a technique that I learned through a health coach training that I did, and as well, it's also in the curriculum for the national board exam. It comes from a book called Taming Your Gremlin by Carson. This is a great coaching book. It's a fairly short book. It's got lots of cool little illustrations and things, and is a really wonderful book a surprisingly simple method of getting out of your own way. So Taming the Gremlins in Your Head. It's a really, really good book. So in that book, he has developed a 5-step process for taming your gremlins, those inner critic voices. And it's a technique that I think really supports, the process that we just went through. So guiding your client through that process, and then really teaching them this technique for how to kind of combat and fight that gremlin when it keeps coming up. Because this is not going to be something that is just going to go away in one session, right? It's not just a flick of a switch. Your client's definitely going to have to do some more work on this one. So the 5R process that Rick Carson has developed for fighting your inner gremlins goes like this. So it's 5 R's. So the 5 steps are easy to remember because they all start with R. So it goes like this. So the first step is number 1, to recognize the limiting belief, the inner critic or gremlin, and identify what the belief is. And as I went through this, I realized that this is kind of a similar process to what I already shared with you, but I think the first 10 steps really great for you to coach your clients through. And then this is kind of like the little takeaway, this 5-step process that your client can kind of come back to the process and kind of remember those key points. So number 1, recognize the limiting belief, inner critic or gremlin, and identify what the belief is. So your client would be thinking to themselves, okay, I can feel that, voice, I can hear it, it's coming up again. What is it saying? I hear that common voice, that familiar voice. What is it? So we recognize it. That's the first step. Number 2 is to refute it, right? You don't want to get into a debate and a sort of back and forth, an argument with your inner critic but we want to refute it, right? We really want to identify the truth. What is really true here in this moment? So have your client just take a moment, take a breath. What is really true here in this moment? And refute that limiting belief. Then the third step is to remove it. We want to just remove that gremlin, that negative inner critic voice. We want to take it to, tell it to take a hike, take a one-way ticket to nowhere. We don't care where it goes. We just want it to go away, right? We want to remove it from your thinking. So we want to remove it, because it's no longer serving you. So that's the third step. Just remove it, get rid of it. The fourth step is to regain your self-confidence, your strengths, your values, come back to who you really are and what you know to be true about yourself. Self-confidence, strengths, values, all those positives that you know about yourself, come back to that, in that moment when those limiting beliefs feel like they're starting to take over. And then the fifth step is to return to the present moment and really make a better choice or a decision. So in that moment, your client may be recalling their affirmation or their mantra, right? They may be just saying, okay, now that I know the truth, now that I know what's happening here in my mind, I can make a better choice, one that is really gonna serve me. So that's the 5 steps around fighting those gremlins. Recognize, refute, remove, regain, and return to the present moment. So I do, as I said before, think that those 2 processes, the 10 steps and then the 5 steps, can really support your clients in moving through their limiting beliefs. So just to summarize, there's just a couple of other things that I want to share with you here. I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier, but this is not something that just, a 20-minute session or a 5-minute conversation with your client is going to be resolved, right? This is something that your client is probably going to need to do some work around, especially if this is something that's been ingrained in them for 20, 30, 40 years, right? This isn't just a flick of a switch that can be shifted. The other thing that we've already talked a little bit about is that your client may need some additional support, therapy, counseling to really heal and process whatever that experience was, to be able to come back to the present moment and move forward. So just really assess and gauge that. So like I said, you may want to encourage your client to do some follow-up work. You may want to give them a homework inquiry, do some journaling, some contemplating, do some meditating on this. Maybe, how are they going to work with that new mantra or affirmation that they have? Maybe you're encouraging them to get this book and work through the exercises here. There's also another book in coaching circles around limiting beliefs. It's a good one, The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. This is very popular in sort of life coaching circles. So that, again, it's a fairly short read, but has some really good tips around moving through resistance. So that's a good one as well. So giving your clients some tools and resources. They may need to do their own research. They may need to do some follow-up work on limiting beliefs, because what we want to remember is that it's not our job to fix our clients, right? It's our job to help move them toward their goals and move through some obstacles that are going to get in the way, but it's not our job to fix. So, really empower through your coaching your client to do some work around this. Let's see, any other tips that I had? We talked about in those steps that it really is what we want to do is, once we go through this, bring awareness to the limiting belief, is really to do some work with your client around their strengths, their values. If they haven't done that kind of work, it's really important to tap into their skills and abilities to really start focusing on the positives, right? Especially if your client has a number of limiting beliefs and they're really negative and down on themselves, right? Doing that kind of work can really help to bolster them. So instead of being stuck in the negative, we want to help start focusing them on the positive. Have they ever overcome anything like this before? What did they do? What worked? Just what supports do they have? What resources, tools, and things do they have, to move forward with this? And the other thing that we want to do around limiting beliefs is help the client go from sort of that victim mentality to creator mentality, right? Again, it's a big part of our work in coaching is to shift that, instead of being that downtrodden victim who, is out of control or has no control over their life, really bring them into that place of creating their own life, being in control, of what they can control. So it's really important to look at that future vision, right? How do they want to change? What does the future look like for them? What does their health and well-being look like for them? So what do they want to manifest going forward, and how can they do it? That part of the coaching process can really, again, bring some motivation and excitement, can bring the control back to your clients so they're not feeling such a victim to previous experiences and all these beliefs and people in their life who've impacted them. It's about them taking back control. So work around that can be really positive here as well. Also, just really offering perspective, reflecting back, reframing things so that they have a new perspective around this. So, if there was a childhood experience, even just restating back to the client, things like, as a child, you made a decision to do something or to think something, and that caused a belief at the time, and it did serve you then, but now as an adult, it no longer serves you. You are an adult now, right? And with this new perspective, how can you move forward differently, right? Let's just bring in that new perspective that you don't have to hang on to that anymore. You can make a different choice now, here, today. So again, just building on that with choice pieces, saying to your client, you can continue to believe these thoughts that you have about yourself. Absolutely. We're not forcing you to not believe that anymore, but you do have a choice. You do have an opportunity to shift into something really that can help you move forward versus staying, in that place of being stuck. So it's up to you. What choice do you want to make? So it really is important for you to help the client make this choice for them so that they know it's a choice. This isn't anything that's being forced, but, really talking about what is really the truth about who you are. And then finally, just a couple other ways to help around limiting beliefs, drawing on past successes, past accomplishments, past wins and successes. What did your client do then, right? Again, that's going to tap into strengths. It's going to tap into values. It's going to tap into what tools and resources do they have in their toolbox to be able to move forward. You can also ask questions like, what do other people think of you in a positive way, right? What would your best friends say to you if they heard you, telling yourself this limiting belief all the time? Or your mother, or your grandmother. These can be nice ways to counter those limiting beliefs. What sources of positive support do they have in their lives to help them move forward from these limiting beliefs? So a lot of great just tips there in terms of how to phrase things, how to talk to your client about this. Another big piece, and this is my final tip around this, is some self-compassion work. So a lot of times people with deep limiting beliefs, don't have a great deal of self-compassion, and this is a great place to do some work. And my favorite author, person on this topic is Kristin Neff, Neff, and she's just a real expert on self-compassion. She's written a couple of books on it, and she also has some really great resources on her website, some free resources. She has some paid courses and things like that as well, but a great resource that you might want to point your client to if you feel they really need to do some work around self-compassion, and that was Kristin Neff. So I hope that was helpful for you today. I know that's a lot to take in, those techniques. Like I said, I will post in the comments a link to a blog that I wrote about limiting beliefs that can give you the essence of those questions that I shared. And so really it's number one, identifying, can your client work through their limiting beliefs? Do they need a referral to a therapist or a counselor? Bring it into the present, reframe it into something that's more positive so that your client can move forward with their health and wellness goals. So again, hope that's been helpful. Any questions at all that you have, please post them in the comments below and I'd be happy to answer them. So just as we wrap up, if you're not already part of my Facebook community, my online community, I would love for you to join us there. My group is called Coaching Skills for Health Coaches, and that's where you can find these videos and a great community of health coaches who are really wanting to do great work as health coaches and build their confidence and their effectiveness. So I'd love to see you over there. So have a great day, everyone, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.